welcome to the quick little presentation on fossils. And what I want you to do is when you watch this video, of course, you're going to be taking notes and writing all the bits and pieces down so you have some information about what fossils are. And so the first thing is that most people think of fossils being bones, but it's a lot more than that. And we can come out with a definition of what a fossil is. It's the remains of any organism or impression that was once living. So that's a very broad definition, and it covers a lot of different areas. And we're going to have a look at some fossils, some examples of fossils, and then relate that to how they form. So the body fossils is probably the one which most people are aware of. So you can see there it says body fossils, most common forms of fossils found from past organisms. And they're the hard parts. So you've got things such as bones, you've got teeth and claws, you've got eggs and skin. Now when we talk about the hard parts, skin is not an example of a hard part. It will form impressions, which is a sort of like a trace fossil, whereas what we normally think of is bones. So let's look at these categories here and see if we can get a bit more information. So bones is probably the one which most people are familiar with, and you can see here we've got a femur that was found in 2014 from a dinosaur that they named Titanosaur, and that's its femur. And now that I mentioned that, I should have brought my femur in. That's a massive one, but you probably couldn't see it in the camera. It's not as big as that one. It is from a woolly mammoth, and for this one here is actually from the biggest dinosaur that they believed at the moment roamed the land. In fact, it was from a sauropod. A sauropod, if you imagine, it's sort of like a long neck. It's a herbivorous dinosaur. And it was, when its neck was up, it's reaching about, I think they said, 7 stories, so about 40 meters high. And it's about 120 meters or so in terms of its length. So very, very long. But with the bone fossil, you can see there that it's a little bit different. Its composition is different to the soil around it. And so that what allows paleontologists to determine the difference between a fossil bone and just the rock surrounding it. You can see also on the screen there's a rib from a dinosaur. If you look carefully in the bottom section just here, right, you can see the internal structure of the bone. So when they excavate the fossil, they know it's a fossil because it is, when they cut it in half, they can see the actual internal structure. For example, I've got some real fossils here. If I show you this one here, it's a bit small. That one there is from an ammonite, and here's a larger one. Okay, so these were marine organisms, and if I try and bring this up to the camera, hopefully it will refocus, right? You can see that there's some sand particles inside there because this section of the ammonite fossil is actually hollow. This is where the organism lived inside there, and it's filled up with sand and minerals, etc. And so that's an ammonite. Then I have another piece of real fossil, which is pretty cool. This one here is actually, it looks like a rock. So it looks like a rock. It's very hard. In fact, this is coprolite. In other words, technical name is coprolite, but of course, if you know anything about fossils, it's dinosaur poo. And so this used to be very soft organic matter, but of course has become fossilized over long periods of time, and so all the organic matter has been replaced by minerals. And so that's part of the process of fossilization, is where you get mineralization occurring. And most people think, well, how do you know the difference between this rock and dinosaur poo? Well, the fact is when they cut it up, there's differences in structure and crystal formation that happens in this mineralization process. I mean, when rocks are first made, and igneous rocks are first made, they have different crystal sizes. Okay, those who study a bit more geology will know that there's like different types of minerals and sizes of crystals depending whether the crystals formed fast or slow. Well, when it becomes a fossil, the way that the formation of the crystals occur is different again, and so they can work out that this is a fossil structure as opposed to just a rock. So that's probably the main one there. Let me show you, have I got any other bones here? No, I don't have any other bones, but I do have another organism which I will show you in the last slide there. Another hard component, I guess you could say, is teeth. And so you can see here that there's different types of teeth, and if I show you my shark tooth fossil here, which is a great white shark, and I lift it up. Hopefully you can see. It's not going to focus. Let's see if we can refocus this. There we go. Oh, getting there. There you go. Oh, I saw it momentarily. There's some edges. Can you see that there's a little bit of serrated edges on the outside there of the shark tooth, which makes it a very powerful adaptation for a carnivorous organism. It's got a tip on the end, so it punctures the skin, but the edges is like a serrated edge, like a saw, and that helps, of course, you know, get through muscle and tissues, etc. So this is from a great white shark. Okay, put that up the top left there. And then, of course, on the picture you can see there's different, I guess, sizes of Megalodon. Now, Megalodon is a extinct shark, and you can see there that there's different ones. This one here is from Bone Valley. 12 meters was the estimated size. Then you had another Megalodon reconstruction, 16 meters, and then one that's 18 meters, depending upon the size of the fossils and then their extrapolation on how big the organism was. But you can see the great white shark there is 7 meters. And then you have a human, 2 meter human there. So a massive shark, and I've got a Megalodon tooth right here. And you can see the size comparison there, right? So absolutely massive. And so this is a fossil of a tooth, which is a hard part of an organism that remains, and very different to one of our large marine carnivores right there. So teeth is another way that we can form fossils. In fact, I've got different teeth here. Well, I did have different teeth. I think they're still stored in the box. I had a T-Rex tooth, etc. But I've only got claws here. So let me check out some claws. Here's a claw from a T-Rex. So this is a toe of a T-Rex. Okay, and as you can see with the size of my hand, if I hold it up like that, it's quite massive. So you wouldn't want one of those gouging out your body. It wouldn't really stay together for very long at all. So that's a T-Rex claw. I remember when I started first getting these fossils, and I'm thinking, I wonder what fossil students would love. And I thought, oh yeah, Jurassic Park. And probably the most famous dinosaur, other than a T-Rex from Jurassic Park, is the Velociraptor. And so I got a Velociraptor claw, and I haven't actually got it in the boxes here, but it was a very small claw. And I remember thinking, that's nowhere near the size that I remember seeing it in the movies. And then with a bit of research, it turns out that what they used in the movies was not a Velociraptor, it was a Utahraptor. Velociraptors are only quite small, they're only up to your knee. So not very ominous when it comes to what it looks like on screen. So they got a Utahraptor, which was a lot taller, and they just call it a Velociraptor. So a little bit of movie, magic or lying ability there. So that's that claw there. So I thought, I wonder what a big claw is that I could get to show you. And the biggest one I could find is this one here. And this one here is from a Megaraptor. And this is the slashing claw of a Megaraptor. Just fits in the screen there. So that is absolutely huge, right? So claws can be hard parts that are quite easily fossilized, all right? Well, before we move on to eggs, actually, I might just show you this one. This is from a sloth. So you've all seen Ice Age. Well, and good old Sid the sloth. Well, this is the sloth claw, and you can see in comparison to my hand, they're quite big. And so you don't realize that because on the movie screen, when they make the animation, Sid looks fairly small. But in terms of real life size, it's actually like, probably 3 or so meters high. So very tall organism. So that's a toe claw from a sloth. All right, what else have we got? Well, we've got eggs. Eggs are trace fossils, and a trace fossil is indirect evidence of life. Okay, so we have impressions there, and you can see that in the impression, and I've got an impression fossil just here. This is from an unknown dinosaur, according to the label at the back there, from California, and you can see it's made an impression in the rock, and that can tell us a lot about the dinosaur. I mean, think about when you're at the beach and you're standing in the sand, you make an impression. But if there is a person who is a lot heavier than you, they make a deeper impression. And so by looking at the depth of the impression, you can work out the weight of the dinosaur. You can also look at where these footprints are made. So see here, you can say, okay, well, if we look at these footprints there, how far apart are they? And that will tell you about the gait of the dinosaur. So how far apart do they walk? All right, are they walking or are they running? So the way the impression is, you know, if you think about your footprint when you're walking on the beach, your walking footprint is very different to your running footprint, because your running footprint, you're up on the balls of your feet, and so it leaves a different type of impression. It also pushes the sand backwards as you propel forwards, right? Newton's third law. And so by looking at these impressions, we can get information about whether they run, whether they walk. Is there a drag mark for a tail? Are there multiple sets of prints? So do the dinosaurs walk in groups, or do they walk individually? So a lot of information there. Then we have eggs. You can see there's a clutch of eggs. And so, you know, this is just a toy, right? This is just a toy, there it is, right, of an egg. There you go, a little dinosaur coming out, right? But then if we have a look at a fossilized egg, right, this is an oviraptor egg, and this is just one fossil, whereas we have a clutch size on the screen there, and with that we can find a lot of information. For example, when they find these, they might find other dinosaur bones near there that have died there, which may suggest that the dinosaur from which those eggs are from, were they herbivorous or carnivorous? Or was that dinosaur that they found there, was that like an egg-eating dinosaur? So there's lots of information that can be formed from the site. So that's an egg. What other fossils do I have? Well, I've got another real fossil here, and this is not a dinosaur, but it's actually woolly mammoth hair. And let's see if we can focus that a bit for you. So that's woolly mammoth hair there, and you can see there's like a brown tinge to it. Okay, it says it's from the Pleistocene period, 10,000 years ago, and it was taken from a haircut of a baby dinosaur in Siberia. Okay, and so they've put it in this plastic here to preserve it, and you know, so you don't lose it, etc. But that is real hair, so we can get hair fossils, hair follicle fossils. We can get teeth, we can get claws, we can get impressions. In fact, we can get skin impressions. So here is skin impression. You can see the lumps of the skin there, right? And this one's from Edmontosaurus. Okay, and this one here tells you a lot about the structure of the skin, but it doesn't actually tell you about the coloration of the dinosaurs, right? You got to remember that we're just hypothesizing what the color is. There has only been a few instances where they've been able to isolate cells, melanocytes, right, which are cells that produce melanin, which is a pigment, and they can work out the rough color of those cells, but that's a very small sample and they can't do the whole organism. So they do a lot of comparative biology here, where they might say, well, this type of dinosaur has this structure. What could it have been used for? So for example, they might look at the plates, the dermal plating of a dinosaur, and they might say, okay, we can see blood vessels going through here, so maybe it was this color. Maybe they used it to change color for you know, predatory reasons, for fighting, or for changing the coloration of their skin to be part of mating rituals, etc. So a lot of what we think is hypothesis and done by comparative anatomy that we do today of similar types of organisms.